I'm happily introducing Kip Kendrick, who has been discussed, is candidate for presiding commissioner of Boone County. I've got a bio that he sent me that I'm going to talk through a little bit. Kip was a state representative from 2015 through 2020. He represented House District 45, which included a large portion of central to northeast Columbia and Boone County. During his 6 years in the House of Representatives, Kip's primary focus was the state budget. And as ranking minority member on the House Budget Committee, Kip ensured that Boone County's interests were well represented. Kip's style, as he's talked about in some of his public events recently, is to listen, learn, then lead. And he values and respects diverse opinions, and he regularly tries to meet directly with constituents. Kip understands the importance of public accountability. As ranking minority member of the Special Committee on Government Oversight and vice chair of the House Ethics Committee, Kip did not hesitate to hold members accountable. He's been on multiple boards and commissions, from trustee for the Missouri Consolidated Health Plan to vice chair of the Missouri Health Facilities Review Committee, which looks at our hospitals, public policy chair for persons in supported employment. He also was a member of the Children's Trust Fund, Columbia Energy Environment Commission, and he was named to the Columbia Business Times 20 and under. I guess now I'll turn it over to Kip. Thank you for being here, Kip.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to see everyone virtually still to this day, I guess, right? That's interesting. It's going to be a very interesting couple of months, it seems like. And we can talk more about that too. What I wanted to kind of focus on today was obviously talk about the campaign for Boone County Presiding Commissioner, but then also chat just briefly about ward reapportionment. Councilman Scala had recommended me for an appointment to the Ward Reapportionment Committee. So just wanted to give you a quick update on it. And then also then transition just briefly at the end to kind of talk about just briefly about the 2022 legislative session. And I'll be happy to take questions across the board about anything, whether it be ward reapportionment, redistricting, the campaign clearly, and anything that you're anticipating or want to know more about with the 2022 legislative session, which I will say is off to a very interesting start in Jefferson City. And there are some major topics that will have to be addressed early in session. This is the first time in my 8 years there that it is going to get very contentious very early, and it is going to be very busy right from the get-go, with some major things having to occur quickly, which is congressional redistricting, and then also a massive supplemental budget bill that will have to get through the General Assembly and through the governor well before March, hopefully before mid-February. But I'll start off by sharing a bit about my campaign. So as you all have probably heard, or maybe are now becoming aware of, I'm running for Boone County Presiding Commissioner. And first off, I sometimes get the question, is the Senate that bad? And no, I enjoy it. I enjoy my time working in the Missouri Senate. It's very frustrating at times. I enjoy working for Greg Grazer. He's been a longtime friend of mine, and I really enjoy my job. I love working in the chief of staff role, and happy that made that move. It has allowed me to be, in my opinion, even more impactful, much more impactful, working as a staffer in the Senate, even from my time working in the House of Representatives. And but the move to Boone County Presiding Commissioner will increase my ability to affect change, especially at the local level. And that's what I'm most excited about. And that's really the reason why I'm running. When I was going through this thought process, I had some people reach out to me who I trust and really asked me to consider running for Boone County Presiding Commissioner. And the more I thought about it, it is something that I had thought about through the years. I figured that Dan would likely retire upon, this retire, or at least consider retirement. He's put in a number of years with the county and kind of suspected that this could be a possibility. But through additional conversations and encouragement, I made this decision. And one of the things I get asked about as well is like, what's your policy platform? And the interesting thing, right, about Boone County Presiding Commissioner or the Boone County Commission is that it's hard to run on a policy platform to say exactly what broad policies you're going to do, because so much of what is allowed by the commission is actually set in state statute. And I think that's, again, I'm going to talk about my experiences and why I firmly believe, and I don't mean to boast, but I've never felt more confident that I'm the right person at the right time to be the next Boone County Presiding Commissioner. The past 8 years has been nothing but an education in Jefferson City. It's allowed me to grow and learn in ways that that I didn't necessarily expect. I always take that mindset of trying to figure out how to learn, just listen and learn constantly throughout life. But the past 8 years has been really truly an educational experience. But it's also allowed me the opportunity to prove myself as a leader and really have the opportunity to sit at the table, even in a super minority, right? To prove my seriousness about policy, to prove my desire to build respect and trust, whether it's working within the caucus of Democrats in the House or now in the Senate, but also working across the aisle with Republicans, certainly on the Budget Committee, where I spent 4 years as a ranking minority member. And as Alice mentioned, serving for 2 years as the vice chair of Ethics Committee, two of the major cases that we saw come through for ethics complaints, those were cases involving alleged wrongdoing of Democrats, people within my own caucus. And, I took that as the head Democrat on the committee and the vice chair of what literally is a bipartisan committee, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. It allowed me, I think, really to demonstrate to leadership over the years, but specifically in those cases, it's not about party, it's about doing what's right. I'm a good Democrat, I have been for a number of years, but it's always about doing what's right for the institution and what's right to make sure government is held accountable and to make sure that elected officials for sure are held accountable for wrongdoing, that oftentimes the wrongdoing gets the headlines and gives elected officials a bad name, gives government a bad name. And it's important that you do everything you can to root out those issues and stop them in their tracks when you get the opportunity. So people ask me again, right? Like if I'm not running on broad ideas of what I'm going to bring to the table or what policy issues I'll address as Boone County Presiding Commissioner, what am I running on? And I'll say I'm running on my experience, the experience of the past 8 years, the experience certainly working on the budget, the experience of being appointed by a Republican governor to help advise the executive branch on how to spend the CARES Act funding. That was an important step. I didn't always agree with how the money was being spent, but at least having a seat at the table, and 2 Democrats in the state having a seat at the table on how to spend that $2+ billion was important, and I think it helped moderate the conversation at times, but it also allowed me to listen and learn on the path that was being proposed by other members as part of that committee, whether they were elected officials or bureaucrats within the executive branch. When we're talking about Boone County, I've been in Boone County for almost 20 years now, and like I suspect several of you here, I came here for economic opportunities, for educational opportunities. I transferred from a college to to Columbia College with the opportunity to work at Job Point, working with people with disabilities, and also to finish up my schooling here. And it was a good opportunity for me. But like so many of you, when I got here, I fell in love with Boone County. I fell in love with Columbia. I fell in love with the community, and I have stayed. And it's going to be my home for as long as I live. And Sarah and I hope, my wife Sarah and I hope that we'll get to watch Abram raise his family here in Boone County. And that's the mindset that I'm bringing to this race. And that's a mindset that I'll bring to being Boone County Presiding Commissioner is continuing to make sure that those economic opportunities and the educational opportunities that make mid-Missouri and Boone County special, that those continue and that people continue to move here, and that those good paying jobs or the fact that it's a wonderful place to live and raise a family and to retire, to make sure that that stays for future generations. I mean, we're at a pivotal time in the world, quite frankly, certainly for the state, certainly for Boone County. We knew that there would be, the quote unquote silver tsunami, the great resignation of baby boomers transitioning from work to retirement. We knew that that was going to happen. We didn't anticipate a pandemic would even spur that to be even faster, right? That major disruption would really lead to a worker shortage, would lead to obviously low unemployment, but also high demand for workers. And Boone County is in a unique opportunity to continue to grow, because we do have growing industries here, but we're going to have to make sure that we elevate our status and do all that we can to recruit and retain employees, recruit and retain citizens here in the region, to make sure that we're filling those jobs and that the industries choose to stay here and that they continue to grow, because that's, again, what makes Boone County special. My experiences have been really diverse over the last several years, and my relationships that I've built inside the Capitol will be important in the role of Boone County Presiding Commissioner. This isn't a criticism of Boone County government right now, but I do think that Boone County, especially a presiding commissioner, can have more of a role and more of a presence in Jefferson City than what we've had in years past. And I really do think that's going to be important, especially in the next decade, because I'm somewhat jealous of my time on budget committee. We were fighting over, unfortunately, budget cuts. Today, the state of Missouri is sitting on a lot of revenue, whether it be general revenue, but specifically a lot of the federal revenue that is federal dollars that have come down. CARES Act money is pretty much spent at this point, but the ARPA funds will continue to come down to Missouri, and the infrastructure funds as well will start being dispersed likely sometime in later 2022 and into 2023 and beyond. Making sure that Boone County is represented in Jefferson City, and that you have a presiding commissioner that has those relationships with Democrats, with Republicans, but maybe more importantly, has those relationships with the staffers who work inside really the Missouri Senate and within the executive branch, those relationships built on trust that I've been able to build up over the last few years, so that as they are figuring out how to appropriate those funds, not just this year, but for the next 4 to 5 years at least, that we are represented and that they understand the importance of Boone County in moving this whole state forward. There is a transformational amount of money in Missouri right now, and there will be a transformational amount of money in Boone County with ARPA funds as they come down to Boone County, clearly as they come down to the city of Columbia as well. And my budget experience, the relationships is going to be, in my opinion, critical to making sure that we can use those dollars to the best of our ability. I'm not going to say that I know what that means at this point. I mean, that's going to take time to really figure out exactly how those dollars, especially the infrastructure dollars, can be adequately spent to get the biggest bang for the buck. But I can promise you that my experience and my energy and my desire to move Boone County forward is going to help, work collaboratively within Boone County government. It's going to work collaboratively in Jefferson City and the state capitol as they appropriate those dollars. It's also going to work collaboratively with other counties across the state. I've served with members who have turned out, who have gone on to be, who are current commissioners in Clay County, in Greene County, in St. Louis County, other counties across the state, not just commissioners, but other county elected officials. And those relationships that I've built, I remain in contact with these people, and it will help us work collaboratively across the state and with counties, and to really learn from each other and to figure out how we can continue to push Missouri forward, not just Boone County, but Missouri. And that's, I think that we all need to be thinking about that, right? It's not just Boone County is critical, but helping other parts of the state and helping Jefferson City understand the importance of Boone County, the economy of Boone County, and how it plays in just pushing Missouri forward will be important. As I mentioned, I can go through. I'm happy to talk about my experiences and some of the commissions that I've sat on, some of the experiences I've had. But I want to close and kind of transition on by saying this. If you'd asked me 8 years ago, do I think that I am qualified to run for and to be Boone County Presiding Commissioner, I don't know that I could have honestly answered that question to say that I was qualified at that time. Being Boone County Presiding Commissioner, it's not an entry level. It's not an entry level government job. You really want someone in that role working with the other commissioners who has had strong experience within government. And we hear a lot and we talk a lot about having government operate more like the private sector. Government certainly can learn and should learn from private sector, but government has different functions than the private sector does. And my experiences within government have been very positive, and my ability to take that experience and bring it back home to Boone County as a presiding commissioner will be important. And again, I really do feel like that's the reason why I will be the best fit to be the next Boone County Presiding Commissioner. If I'm not successful, I'll continue it on in public service, right? If I'm not successful in this race, I will continue working in the Missouri Senate. Like I said, I love that job. I love the institution of the General Assembly. I love my ability to impact change at that level. It's not like I'm seeking to leave that role. I promised Greg asked for an 8-year commitment when I went to go work for him, and I kind of laughed and I said, I'll promise you 2 years, Greg. And we can reevaluate at that point. If I'm elected to this role, then I will fulfill my 2-year promise with Greg. And if I'm not elected, then he's already said, you're staying here. You're safe. You're going to stay with me. And part of that's somewhat freeing. In this age of COVID, in uncertainty for sure, we all have a level of anxiety. But I have to approach this race. I'm going to give it my all. I'm off to a strong start. Had a very strong fundraising period for the last 5.5 weeks of the year, and getting out and making a lot of meetings. I'm going to give this race my all. If I'm the Boone County Presiding Commissioner, I'm going to give it my all. That's what I do. I really throw myself into these things and really do all that I can to serve the public to the best of my ability. But it's also freeing to know that if people of Boone County choose someone else, then I'll continue doing what I love, and I'll continue serving the public in any way and in the aspect that I can. So I appreciate the time. I want to take questions certainly about the race and the campaign, but want to switch over really quickly to ward reapportionment. I want to I can publicly thank Carl for recommending me to serve on the Ward Reapportionment Committee for the City of Columbia. For those of you who remember 10 years ago, there seemed to be some shenanigans underway, and some attempts potentially to gerrymander, but strong community involvement and support, working with strong members of that commission at that time at the committee, including Dr. Miller, who's a part of the Ward Reapportionment Committee now. The best map prevailed, and it was a good process 10 years ago. It ended up being a good process. Part of my goal serving on the committee this time around was to make sure that that we dealt with the maps in a way that would be fair and not gerrymandered, and that would certainly represent the will of the council, and also just be the best opportunity to have fair maps for a City of Columbia. I can say with absolute certainty that the people who are serving on that committee right now come to it with the best of intentions. We have 2 maps right now. We'll likely have a 3rd map that we will share with the public at some point here in the near future. We'll have some. We will seek public comment as a committee. We will also have meetings around different wards. I'm looking to have a meeting on January 20th. If everything goes as planned, we'll have that meeting. We'll announce that meeting sometime soon. But there are a lot of data analysts on the committee. There's excellent members on the committee who are taking this very seriously. And I really, truly, bottom of my heart, I feel like everybody who is a part of that process is using it not to drive an agenda, not to push an agenda, other than really analyzing maps that work well for the city. And it's refreshing. So it's a lot of hours right now, and it will be a lot of hours moving forward, but no one has an agenda that is trying to to favor any one political party or potential political party. No one's having a map to favor any one person or any one issue. It's really a good discussion. And I'll close and turn it over to questions by saying, again, I'm happy to take some questions on the 2022 legislative session. It's got off to a bang this week. The House, usually this early in session, you're seeing the House gavel in, gavel out quickly. The Senate usually gavels in, gavels out quickly, and you start seeing bills slowly move through the process. On the Senate side, starting on day 1, you kind of saw an airing of the grievances that had continued from this last session into this session. And it really does seem as if things are a bit problematic right now in the Missouri Senate. And I'm not, I've got to be careful on how I answer this because I am a staffer, right? I don't want to speak for Senator Razor, but I will say there are certainly some issues that have to be worked forward, hopefully in a timely fashion, because I mentioned congressional redistricting is going to have to happen very quickly, and I think it's going to be close to a $5+ billion supplemental budget bill, which is a supplemental budget bill halfway through the current fiscal year of FY22, is going to have to get passed. And that supplemental budget bill is going to include Medicaid expansion funding. It's going to include federal funding for education. And these education funds, if we don't get that passed by March, then we lose billions of dollars in the federal education funding. Also, it's going to include conversations on state employee raising the minimum wage of state employees to $15 an hour, and doing a half year adjustment on wages for state employees. Missouri is no different than any other business or state at this point. We're losing a lot of employees, and Missouri probably more so than other states because of the pay. We're still near the bottom on state employee pay, and it really has led to losing a lot of seasoned professionals going on to other higher paying jobs, or choosing retirement as a better option than continuing to work in this environment. So With that, I'm happy to take any questions and want to have a good dialogue here.
Pam?
Thank you. What I am reading now, Kip, about the split in the Republicans from the conservatives to the other Republicans, it might give us a chance to get more of our things done in the Democratic Party. And because Caleb Rowden is the one who says what bills can come to the floor, he may, if we work with him, it might help.
Yeah, so I'm happy to, yes. Again, I've got to be careful on how I answer all these questions, right? As I am work for Senator Razor, but I'm happy to take those questions, happy to talk to him about it. So there is the split within the Republican caucus right now. It is such a large caucus, it is pretty natural that you would have a split within the caucus, varying interests. So you have kind of what would be like the more, not necessarily traditional, but kind of the leadership side of the Republican caucus, which is about 17 members at this point. And then you have the conservative caucus, which is a smaller group of about 5 senators at this point. But it's important to remember any one senator, even regardless of party, any one senator is kind of an island of power in themselves, right? And it's just the way the system's structured, where the House, quickly passes things and the Senate's more deliberative. So those 5 senators working together can be very powerful, especially not just within their caucus, but within the whole body. And that division there is it is really, in my opinion, it's kind of elevated Democrats' ability, and Democrats in the Senate have a greater ability to get things done, but that split has allowed Democrats to kind of figure out ways to work within the 2 separate caucuses within the Republican caucus to get things done and to help to maybe potentially slow things down that are not ideal, or to move things forward, to advance priorities for the state or Democratic priorities. And Senator Rizzo is the minority caucus leader on the Senate side, and I served with JJ on the House side, and now work under him to a certain extent as he is the minority leader. And I think he does a really good job of leading the Democratic caucus in such a way that kind of finds ways to leverage that power to the best of his ability to really elevate Democrats. It'll be interesting though to see how the split plays out, because it's, for those of you paying attention, that split's very real right now, and its feelings are very raw at the start of this session.
So in expanding Medicaid monies, we have to watch to make sure that they don't not fund Planned Parenthood. I guess they're probably going to try to do that. But is that one of the things you're looking at?
Yeah, on the Medicaid expansion route, unfortunately, that fight's not quite done. I think it's going to, I feel confident it's going to resolve itself in a favorable manner. You would think that it would be done since the courts have ruled, and obviously since the people spoke at the ballot box. But now with the implementation of Medicaid expansion comes the need to fund the supplemental budget. And since my time in Jefferson City on the budget committee, the General Assembly always truly only tried to fund about 2/3 of the Medicaid cost every year, and then would come back in the supplemental budget and fund the remaining third, or potentially more or less, depending on how Medicaid expenditures were going. Now, I agreed with that approach. It became a bit problematic because you get some members saying, well, look how expensive Medicaid has become. Well, no, we knew that we were underfunding it up front. We wanted to make sure that we got close to the correct dollar amount, so we would come back and fund it in the remaining costs in a supplemental. But now with Medicaid expansion, in order to fund that expansion, since we underfunded it, we didn't fund expansion at all, and we underfunded Medicaid costs up front for FY22. The expansion piece and the remaining funding is going to be about $1.3 billion, vast majority of which is federal funds, right? It'll just be a small portion of general revenue. But that will be a fight. That will be a struggle. I mean, I fully expect the House to pass out a clean budget bill, supplemental budget bill, and get that to the Senate quickly. But there will be lines drawn in the Senate to try to either block that funding, or probably more likely to try to put some language, Part B language, in the budget bill to undermine Medicaid expansion. We don't know. I don't know how that would work. I don't think it would necessarily work, but there will certainly be some late nights, some filibusters, and ongoing conversations about how Medicaid expansion is funded for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Did I also read that some do not want to fund birth control in Medicaid?
Yeah, so that was certainly a battle over the interim in I guess it was that September, August, when we were called in for a special session to renew the federal reimbursement allowance, the FRA, that allows us to draw down more federal dollars. There were attempts to ban certain forms of birth control. And I'll say this, without the women senators, both Democrat and Republican senators, I think that those bans could have possibly passed. But women in both parties got together and said, no, we're not doing this. And
okay.
And it actually worked out best. We got a multi-year extension on the FRA, and we got it done in a fairly clean manner.
Okay, thank you.
Herb and Sue. Excuse me, Herb and Sue.
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for being here, and thank you very much for running. You said of yourself you thought you were the right person for this time, especially the right person. I agree, in more ways than is easy to enumerate, starting with your budget experience, which is, and by becoming a leading go-to person in very short time on matters connected with that beyond boundaries of the legislature. That's a hallmark of the best, the brightest, the most effective throughout the world. But what would you like us to emphasize? Please don't let your shyness and modesty constrain you here. If you want to say, I'm young and good looking compared to you folks, that fits. But you have so many good qualifications that fit here. What are some of the ones that you'd like to see us most repeat?
You know, it really comes back to just my leadership style is, and people are probably going to get tired of me saying this, and some of you probably already are, but it really is a listen, learn, lead mentality. And I think that I teach some leadership classes at Columbia College, and that's something I try to instill in the class and to students is that, I think we get this kind of perverse expectation of what leadership is from political leaders today, and just this divisive mentality, and this mentality that I have all the answers, and here's the way we're going to do this. It's my way or the highway. And I think that's completely bogus, and I get so frustrated with that mentality. I understand that it scores some quick political points. I probably understand that it's better at campaigns, but really the expression that I don't have all the answers is freeing, but also it's just the understanding, like, I want to get the answers. I want to listen to you, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're business or community organization, whether we have the same views or not. I want to hear what your perspective is. And if your perspective is different than mine, then maybe you talking to me is going to help me reinforce my ideas. Maybe you're going to change my thinking on this as well. And that's going to be my approach to being a commissioner. And this is a diverse county. And we have, obviously, Columbia being really the center of it, but there are a lot of small communities around here that are vibrant, right? That are growing in population, which is fairly unique for rural Missouri at this point, but also have their own unique, culture and clearly like the bonds that keep them together. I grew up in Monroe City and, in rural Missouri, and, people in Monroe City are proud to be from Monroe City, right? People from Centralia are proud of Centralia, Hallsville, same way. And understanding those differing, those different needs, or being willing to listen to what those different needs are, but then figuring out how to weave those together in such a way that kind of allow us to move the whole county forward together. And that comes back to that listen, learn, lead. I not always, especially in like committee meetings and stuff in Jefferson City, I wasn't always wasn't the first one to speak. I would do more absorbing and then try to figure out, okay, how can we address some of these issues, and how can we do so thoughtfully? And that's, I don't know, that's probably not a great campaign message. It's probably not easy to explain to people.
Can I add just a little
that's
something
my demeanor. Yeah.
to simplify it?
Yeah.
What I think of you, and going back, and I think you can say it more succinctly and get to a less sophisticated crowd. And that is that you started out in your public service as the president of a neighborhood association. And your role in that was largely to listen to the people and try to help them solve their problems, either as a group or if they had individually problems. And you have continued that, but you've also tried to take leadership role. But I think that's a more succinct way of getting it to, I'm just trying to help you.
Oh, Sue, thank you. Can you send me some bullet points too on my, help me get my messaging down more succinctly.
But that's what I use when I talk about you, because I think that sets the tone for who you are.
Mhm.
And I mean, it probably doesn't surprise you if you don't know, but I was a social worker for 7 years here in Columbia, working for Job Point, for Boone County Family Resources, for Rural Behavioral Health, doing social work. So I mean, I do have that calling, right, to kind of help listen to what people's issues are and try to figure out paths forward.
And Missouri clearly Boone County clearly need administrations, good social workers at this point.
Okay, David Robinson, and then Carl, and then David Luthold, in that order. Thank you.
Okay, Kip, I was very interested to hear you talking about how, as presiding commissioner, you envisioned using your wider connections that came from your time in Jeff City. I like this idea because I think Columbia could punch a little higher than its weight than it does right now. I think people in Missouri think of us in terms of football weekends, and maybe a few crazy liberals like us, but otherwise not so much. And there's so much more going on here. So I'll just give the example of one of your future colleagues, perhaps Janet Thompson. And when I got to know her, she was getting involved with organizations and writing grants that had to do with law enforcement and mental health. And she was going, maybe certainly around the country, maybe around the world, meeting with people and getting well known in those circles. And that had to do, of course, with her background. She's done other things too. What kinds of, organizations, efforts do you envision getting that you think could work for Columbia to show leadership in its county government? You probably would take any opportunity given, but what kind of things do you imagine or even know about in these wider connections now?
That's a really good question, and I'm trying to learn more, right? But the Association of Counties I've had a long-standing relationship with the Missouri Association of Counties within the Capitol. They're not just their lobbying team, but also their leadership team. and I will remain close to them certainly over this year, with Greg continuing to serve on the local government committee and close interactions with, and also the Missouri Municipal League and other groups as well. And so just those ongoing connections that have been able to build at the state level, like I mentioned, the former colleagues and the future former colleagues that will likely, as it's the thing with term limits, right? People cycle through the building quickly and then they often go back to their community. Some of them move up to federal level, but often they go back to their community and serve in those leadership roles. And when you serve in the General Assembly and you make an effort not to burn bridges like I have, those connections you have, you can call on those people because you have that bond of whether you're in the same political party or opposite or working across the aisle, you have those bonds of serving together, you have those stories, you have those relationships that are going to last for years that you can then collaborate with and work with across the state. But I mean, as you mentioned, David, I really do think, Boone County, we all know that this is a great place to live. I really do think we can elevate it through, just being more open, more public facing, and just that effort to be more collaborative. And not saying that the current commission isn't collaborative or the county government isn't, but I think we can even take it to that next level of where we are having a seat at the table across the state and doing what we can to elevate and to fight for and to make strong pitches for funding for whether it be University of Missouri or Missouri Research Reactor, things that aren't necessarily part of state government, but those conversations that if we're in Jefferson City working on a county issue, we can also have those conversations of why you should fund this inside of Boone County, why this would help move not just Boone County forward, but the entire economy forward. I've seen that happen in the last several years. Columbia Chamber and this coalition of a wide variety of interest groups working together in the Capitol more collaboratively. And sometimes, that group, there are members of the group who don't necessarily get their priority at the top of the Boone County Columbia priority list, but they work together collectively. And I've seen that be, I've seen it work. And just the need to continue that on and be more, not just working here in Boone County, but taking that across the state.
Okay. I think Carl's next. Carl?
Yeah. Oh, hi, Kip. It's good to see you again. It's always good to talk to you. And I know I nominated you for that redistricting committee. That piques my interest, of course, because the news that you've shared is more news than I've heard about, even from the press, about redistricting. And I was through the last attempted puts in redistricting. I wasn't in office at the time, but there was an attempt to skew the results. And I too share your view that the folks that were on that commission or appointed to that committee are first rate. So I'm reassured with that. But I think about your other comment. There's so many comments when I see you that I think about, but I think about your comments about relationships. And obviously you have the relationships to the state legislature. It's never been on top of my list, the state legislature, to be honest with you. It's always been more, my interests have always leaned more towards local. And I'm glad to see that you've seen the light and decided to come back and kind of in that direction. But those relationships, if you remember, go all the way back at least to 2007, when you helped me on some of my campaigns and the times that we spent in your living room on Windsor and South William on the east side are very memorable. So my question, however, and I have one here, has to do with the relationship of the county to the city, and the relationship of the county commission and the city of Columbia. It's waned and it's waxed over the years, and with various personnel and so on. We are, interestingly, sitting on a ton of money, strangely enough. I mean, as a result of the COVID pandemic in many ways, and also the infrastructure thing. What do you think about those collaborations in terms of regional ideas about how we might move the city and the county ahead in the context of a very, very red state, which you've had tremendous experience with?
There's a lot there. I'll start with the relationship between the city and county, right? Having served in Jefferson City and see some of those, those battles play out even in Jefferson City, right? Where it's the city-county issues. I think the relationships had deteriorated enough where some of those issues are being brought to Jeff City. I mean, as well as I do, and it appears certainly that that relationship between city and county have been repaired, but there's a significant amount of change, a tremendous amount of change happening at the city level right now, and it's going to be critical. I really think I think DeCarlin's outlook and mindset and his approach to things is not going to be competitive. I feel good about the ability for a commission and city manager to work well together, but also changes the city council. I think it's going to be in a new mayor. It's going to be important that the commission and the city council and the city manager and everyone, there's just that good dialogue and constant communication that's happening between Columbia and Boone County, but then also obviously the other communities that live in our area. And I know, you're right in the middle of it right now. One of the big things coming up is the Wayfair fix and the conversation that that's going to bring, and the need to making sure that the county and the city and other cities around the Boone County, that we're all pulling in the same direction, that there is open dialogue and good communication there to make sure that there's that issue is expressed in such a way that it garners support, because you may not get a ability to ask that question very often, and if it goes south when it's put next time before the ballot on the ballot, then it may be a real problem. And just those setting aside egos or setting aside differences that may exist sometimes between city and county, or the city and other municipalities across the county, and just having that dialogue is going to be important. And that certainly will be my approach. And I know we've always had good communication, but making sure that communication continues.
I will ask about the congressional redistricting and what is happening in the legislature, and what is likely to happen with regard to congressional redistricting.
David, that's a great question. I was hoping someone was going to ask. There are 4 members. I think I want to say 4 members of the Missouri Senate who are running for Congress. I want to say 4, and then 1 additional person running for the U.S. Senate. Those members, obviously, of the Missouri Senate running for Congress are going to have a vested interest in how those maps are drawn. The conversation how the conversation has played out, I think, with the media is, in my opinion, is a little bit different than how it's actually going to potentially play out in reality. Missouri Republicans, certainly leadership within the House and the Senate agreed upon a 6-2 map. But as soon as they put that 6-2 map out there, that did protect, the incumbents, and certainly didn't shift the Democratic seats around too much, where the incumbents there would likely be safe moving forward, or at least, like I said, at least a 6-2 map. As soon as they put those maps out, certain members, especially the conservative caucus in the Senate, said that's not going to work. We're not going to do that. We're going to do 7-1. We have the ability to do 7-1 map, and that's what we should be focused on, is drawing a map that reflects the supermajority in Jefferson City, regardless, I think, of how the electorate plays out, where it's more of a 63-37 split, 60-40 split in Missouri. there is going to, in my opinion, there's going to be a strong push for a 7-1 map to be drawn to where, Representative Cleaver, Congressman Cleaver is potentially drawn out of his seat. We actually saw Congressman Long endorse this map today, earlier this morning. He put out a statement on social media that was basically to the effect of 7-1 equals 8, 7-1 or 6-2 is a non-starter or something like that, but basically drawing a line in the sand. And as this conversations move forward, you're actually seeing more national pressure coming down to Missouri to draw a 7-1 map. So I think that what we've seen in the media, I think, has more been this conversation. It's going to be 6-2. It's going to be 6-2. I've always thought all along that we have to be ready and weary and ready to defend a 6-2 map, because the pressure is certainly mounting to draw it in such a way that strips Cleaver of that seat, and it's going to be contentious, and there will be many late nights in my near future discussing this issue further in the Senate.
Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Cripes.
Are there other questions for
Yes.
Kip?
Pam? Is
Yeah.
there
So
another question?
as citizens, should we be ready to start emailing somebody to tell them to defend it? Do we have any say-so in defense? I know from the League of Women Voters, they ask us to let the people on the committee know what our feeling is about it.
Yeah, so certainly the House and the Senate, the Missouri maps. I know the League of Women Voters were strongly engaged in that process, and I know that the League of Women Voters clearly is watching the congressional maps. Yeah, I mean, having conversations with people in the committee, in the Senate committee, who will get the first peek at the map. I fully expect for that committee to pass out a 6-2. I don't think you see that 7-1 really drop until it's actually a floor amendment in the Senate. And that, the House I think the House, fully expect the House to send us a 6-2 map, but I expect it will actually get ironed out through the amendment process on the Senate floor. And so, being in contact, Senator Rowden, I believe, is on the record for the 6-2 that was proposed. But there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in a leadership role, a lot of pressure on others to consider that 7-1 map.
So we should contact him and let him know that we support the 6-2.
Yeah, I would. And
would it be worthwhile?
I think so, and I would certainly, use the league, and I say this as a Democrat, but also just the fact that the 6-2 map still isn't quite reflective of where we are as a population. As I said, about 60-40, but it's certainly more representative of where the electorate is than a 7-1. And I would say, working with the League of Women Voters in other areas across the state to encourage them to reach out to members of the Senate. And again, I'm not saying I think that odds are a 6-2 map emerges, but it's certainly not out of the realm possibility. It's a 7-1.
Okay.
And the Missouri House and the Missouri Senate maps will both end up in the judiciary on January 23rd in a matter of a few weeks. And hopefully the judiciary will just be looking at the disputed areas, which, in general terms are, parts of Jackson County, parts of Clay County, St. Louis County, Greene County, and Boone County, both on the Senate side and the House side. Hopefully they don't redraw the entire map, but it's going to be it's going to be late before we get those Missouri House and Senate seats. As
Right.
well.
And Rudy Keller told us that we have enough people in Boone County that we should get our own state Senate with just maybe a little more from another county.
Yeah, I think it's all but done at this point that Boone County will be a standalone Senate district. Yeah,
Great.
I think that I'm very confident that'll happen.
Very, very exciting, very exciting.
That's
I'm
much.
going to call on Al Plummer and then Carl and Herb and Sue, and you might want to put your questions in the chat if we run out of time. Al?
Yes, thank you, Kip. Hello. I'm enjoying being at least an advocate for your political journey, and I wish you well. I guess I'm confused as a layperson. I hear you use terms like 6-2 map, 7-1 map, and then in terms of getting support for one, the other, or another option, we should write letters to certain senators, et cetera. And if I'm not wrong, this current General Assembly has rejected the people's desire in terms of how these deliberations go. Do you see any impact coming from the general public, and how do we explain to the average person that doesn't know 6-2, 7-1 from a hole in the ground? How do we tell them that these are the options and this is probably one better than the other?
Al, that's a great question. And I don't want to sound pessimistic. I mean, I encourage everyone to reach out, to their elected officials in Jefferson City about the maps. But I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I really do think it's really going to come down to what the national pressure is on how these maps are drawn. You're seeing, I mean, it's just gerrymandering, right? Like you're seeing states like New York where the maps are going to be drawn certainly to pick up more Democratic seats. You're seeing even, in a bordering state like Illinois where there's likely to be at least one more pickup on a Democratic seat. And then these razor thin margins of where you're possibly going to see the House just continue to flip back and forth. This map drawing process for the next decade is going to be wildly influential. And as the maps are really emerging in every other state, Missouri is going to be one of the last ones to finalize maps. You're going to see that pressure coming in from the national level to carve out one more Republican district. Now, there's also risk for Republicans drawing a 7-1 map, because drawing a 7-1 map may mean, mid to late 2020s, it could mean a 5-3 map. It could flip. And so I think that there's some of them who are 6-2, not necessarily because of like an anti-gerrymandering approach, but more of a pragmatic approach of, hey, this may not be 6 or 7-1 forever. It may change, certainly depending on demographics and growth in urban areas continuing in Kansas City, St. Louis. They're really where how you would shift to get a 7-1 map, especially in the Kansas City region. So having those conversations, writing is important. At the end of the day, I think it's really going to come down to conversations that are coming down from the top, and how they think how a map could potentially be manipulated to be a 7-1 for the next decade. Sorry, I know that doesn't really answer the question, but
I think Al needs to know that we have 8 congressional federal districts. And what we're trying to say is that it could be 7 Republican districts and 1 Democrat. And we don't want Emmanuel Cleaver to lose his district. So we would prefer 2 Democratic districts and 7 Republican.
Okay, so when you say
Six
that's,
Republican.
I think some of my confusion, when you say 6-2, that means there's a high possibility that 2 Democrats would be elected out of the 8 congressional districts.
Mhm.
Sorry, I apologize.
No,
Yes.
okay. All
That's
right.
exactly what that means. Yeah, so 7-1, 7 Republicans to 1 Democrat, that being, Congresswoman Bush in the St. Louis area. And a 6-2 would, at this point, assuming that Congressman Cleaver would win re-election and Congresswoman Bush, those would be the two Democrats. And there are some open seats that lean Republican that you would assume that will likely play out that way.
Best to you, my friend.
Thanks.
Carl's got an interesting question in the chat. Kip, if you could address that maybe? Or Carl could say it.
I can read it.
Yeah.
They said you referred to Boone County's relationship to the state in terms of its class status, for example. Any ideas with respect to increasing Boone County's independence?
Oh, I've got to work on this answer, Carl.
I didn't mean to. I
you're
didn't want it. I'd rather give you softballs in some ways, but
I mean, I think that conversation will likely come back up, right? Was that the early 90s? I think the last time Boone County's had that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I'm really trying to understand the historical perspective on how that early 90 conversation played out. And it's my understanding that partly that conversation played out where it was, it wasn't all of Boone County government, all the elected officials, feeling like their seats were going to remain elected positions. And so you kind of had a lot of people, even potentially within county government, working against a plan to move more towards independent and charter form of county government. I would assume that conversation certainly will arise, and I don't know how it plays out. Certainly, in the short to medium term, it would certainly be advantageous to have someone who has those relationships. So when you have to go hat in hand to Jefferson City, asking for a change in statute in order to expand roles or clarify certain roles, you have those relationships inside the building. But I do expect that conversation to probably come up, especially as Boone County continues to grow. You'll probably see. We'll probably have that conversation within the next decade, I would assume. And I don't know how far it moves is actually put before the people, but it will certainly be up for discussion.
Thanks, Kip. If we have more time, Herb had one more question again.
Kip,
Yes.
is there anything out of the box about current Boone County policy, Boone County administration, which you are already committed to change?
Changing. I'd like to see Boone County have more of a strategic plan, seeking more input from the public, certainly seeking more direction and cooperation from within elected officials within county government, and trying to figure out where we want to be in the next decade and beyond, and really starting to figure out how we can budget in ways that isn't necessarily looking fiscal year to fiscal year, but looking, setting those goals and trying to work with other elected officials within the county government to prioritize prioritize funding so that we have, 3-year benchmarks, a 5-year benchmark, a 10-year benchmarks that we can, as revenue rolls in, we can really plan out those funding, funding and moving the county forward. And I think, I really think that's missing at this point. And I really do think that that's how, it's hard to know where you want to go if you haven't had that conversation, right? It's hard to know where we want to be with Boone County without seeking input from Boone County citizens, and without working collectively with the elected officials who obviously have big roles within their role in county government, but also just having that joint conversation within the government to figure out how we're going to prioritize certain things and set benchmarks that are achievable.
Good work. Good.
Thank you for running.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here with us today, Kip. Appreciate it so much. Thank everyone. I think our time is up now. Remember, next week we're having Andrew Grabow of the Heart of Missouri United Way. So be back here for that one. I would go ahead and say, go ahead and keep talking, because usually that's what we do. But since we do have an executive committee meeting afterward, are there any last minute questions we want to get from Kip before we close the meeting? Is there anything just burning that you wanted to ask or say? Oh, I think I saw Al. Are you wanting to speak, or are you just waving?
Yes, no, I did have another, hopefully much simpler question, Kip. In today's world of variety of communications, what is the best way to communicate with the political leadership, say, for example, on this redistricting issue? Is it by letter, by phone call, by email? What's the best way to get through?
I would say all of the above, but certainly email. In my opinion, I think email. And I say that as a staffer. If you send an email to, especially at the Senate level, if you send an email to a state senator, their staff is going to read it first. But we log everything, right? We keep track of everything. We're communicating, and senators will certainly go in and look at their inbox. I would assume all of them do, and read what's in there. But their staff is certainly, we're monitoring that more quickly to see what's timely as they're in committee meetings or in other meetings. The staff is really looking at those first. That's a good way of doing it. The phone calls are good because, again, those are tallied as well and communicated to the elected officials. So I think any way that you feel comfortable doing is important. And I've said this before, even if it's, sometimes you see those, you sign on to a petition that sends an automated email. Those automated emails from my standpoint are always good. Even if it's the same thing, you at least know where people are coming from. You at least know that someone's paying attention to it and it's important to them. And, in the spreadsheets that you keep, you mark that up, whether it's a form email or a personalized email.
Who would be the key people for the Congressional or the redistricting issue?
Certainly in Boone County, it would be Senator Rowden. But any other senators that you want to reach out to, you can typically, if you send an email to Senator Rowden, you can typically copy and paste it to other elected officials as well in the Senate. So, but Senator Rowden, is currently, he's a majority floor leader, in an important role, kind of ushering that process through the Senate. I don't envy his position in handling that. I really don't. It will be a tricky process to watch the congressional district redistricting play out.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate everyone for being here. I would like to go ahead, because of the time, and close the regular portion of our meeting. Oh,
Wait,
Alice?
No, I'm just thanking Kip again.
Oh, all right. Yes, that's all. Give Kip a big hand for being here. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Kip.
Thank you, Kip. Thank you.
Good luck in your campaign. All right. right, I think we will go ahead, just in the interest of time, we need to go ahead and close the regular meeting. Again, everyone's welcome to stay. We're not trying to run anyone off. We just need to go ahead and go into our other. I don't anticipate this being a long meeting, but we do need to the officers need to share some things. So if we will, I think all the officers at least were sent copies of the minutes from the previous executive committee meeting. So are there any questions about what Al Tucker sent out for that?
No, I move that we accept the minutes from last month. Pam?
And is Al here?
I'm here.
Oh,
And I second
okay, Al says there it is. Okay,
Kathy.
all right, very good. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. All in favor, raise your hand if you will. I think no one's unmuted. All right, very good. You can put your hands down. And I will declare that passed. This because as all the hands are up. All right, very good. Thank you. Treasurer's report, Pam and David.
Yes. The checking account balance on December the 31st, and it's the same now, was $6,165.41. And the money market is $863.01. And I set it out because sometimes all those numbers are hard to hear. And then David asked me to also give the balance at, I think, the previous month. I emailed it all to him, and now I've got to look through these papers to see.
Did you just send that this morning?
No, it was right after you asked me yesterday. So that you want to, it would be at the end of November, the 1st of December. Was that balance?
I would think the beginning of December would match the end of November. So
Yeah, right.
probably.
Okay.
Okay.
That balance.
Okay. That balance on November the 30th or December the 1st was $6,031.17. And the money market was $863. We get a penny every month. What was the other thing you asked?
Expenditures and income.
Okay, yeah.
Are we dealing with pennies, or do we get any income, or do we have thousands of dollars coming and going? I can't tell that.
We get an income of 1 penny every month for money market, but now we're getting lots of income because people are paying their dues.
Good.
So during December, we had income of $149.23. In